Welcome to this explainer on system prompts from Claude Master. Look, today we are diving into one of the absolute most fundamental, yet ridiculously powerful tools in the entire Claude API. If you're looking to graduate from those unpredictable kind of random chat interactions and actually start building robust, enterprise-grade applications, well, this is exactly where that journey starts.
Think about it like this. Imagine hiring an absolute genius of an employee, sitting them down at a desk and giving them zero job description. Nothing. That is essentially what happens every single time you call the Claude API without a system prompt. Sure, you'll get some output, but it's rarely what your application actually needs. System prompts are how we take that unstructured chaos and finally fix it.
So what does this actually look like programmatically? Simply put, a system prompt is a special instruction block. You send it right through the client.messages.create method, and it establishes the rules of the session before a user message even hits the server. You are literally defining who Claude is, exactly how it should respond, the formatting to use, and even what topics it needs to completely avoid. It sits right at the very top, acting as an umbrella over the conversation, and it fundamentally shapes everything beneath it.
Now listen up, because here is a critical warning, and this catches so many developers completely off guard. The Claude API is completely stateless. Unlike the web interface you might be used to, the API remembers absolutely nothing between calls. Zero. If you want the exact same behavior on call 47 as you had on call 1, you have got to resend those instructions. You are 100% responsible for your system prompt.
Which brings us to a key formula you really need to internalize. One instruction block, sent on every single call, yielding consistent behavior. Adding this one foundational block completely eliminates the need to constantly re-explain the role, the tone, and the output structure. It drastically cuts down on those frustrating, inconsistent responses. To really understand the power of that instruction block in action, let's compare the difference. When you fire off a raw API call with no system parameter, the response is usually generic, a bit too wordy, and very conversational. But when you pair that exact same user message with a system parameter that defines an analyst role, the response immediately snaps into sharply structured sections. It is the exact same raw data, but it results in completely different, highly tuned behavior.
Let's make this totally concrete with a real-world example. Imagine a fintech startup building an investment research tool. They need Claude to behave exactly like a senior analyst. So they define a strict persona using a system prompt just like this. You are a senior financial analyst at an investment bank. Always structure your response with exactly 3 sections. Be concise and data-driven. Do you see what they did there? They're telling Claude exactly who to be before any data even arrives.
And because they set that systemic constraint up front, when Claude is handed raw data on, say, Acme Corp., it is absolutely forced to evaluate it and output exactly 3 steps: key metrics, risk factors, and recommendation. It reliably flags things like valuation premiums or refinancing exposure. And honestly, the best part? Your front end can simply read those section headers to render the interface. No crazy parsing gymnastics required on your end.
Okay, so you might be wondering, when do you use which? As a general rule of thumb, use a system prompt for your persistent rules, your personas, and those strict formats. Basically the things that absolutely must not drift during a session. Save your regular user messages for the variable tasks, like asking it to summarize a specific article on the fly. Bottom line, if violating a constraint is going to break your application, it absolutely belongs right there in the foundational system prompt. All right, let's shift gears for a second and talk about cost and how this fits into your scaling strategy. Since you're sending this foundational block every single time, those system prompt tokens are billed on every single API call. And if you've got a really long system prompt running at high volume, well, that really adds up. But the fix here is Anthropic's prompt caching feature. It lets you cache those static system prompts at a significantly reduced token rate after that very first call. If your prompt is hundreds of tokens long, this is literally a game changer for scaling your app efficiently. So here is your key takeaway for this explainer. The system prompt is the ultimate behavioral contract between your application and Claude. You've got to define the role. You've got to specify the output structure, and you have got to set those constraints. Without it, Claude just defaults to being a friendly general-purpose assistant. But with it, Claude completely transforms into the highly specific, expert tool your application actually demands. I'm going to leave you with this final thought. Are you ready to finally give Claude its job description?
Honestly, mastering this one simple block of code changes absolutely everything about how you build with AI. If you want to dive deeper into fully worked examples and figure out how to avoid the most common developer pitfalls, go check out the full chapter at claudemaster.net. Thanks so much for tuning into this explainer.